Hey, what's up everyone? This is James Jesso from Adventures Through the Mind, and I want to talk to you today about whether or not psychedelics can save the world, after I very safely cross these train tracks. So in a recent YouTube video about the importance of LSD in my life, I said this.
I do think that LSD is an incredibly important molecule for the future of humanity because it's pretty obvious that we're fairly wrapped up in a very divisive and extreme time politically and socially, and our incapacity to take ourselves out of our own personal frame of reference and consider the issues and complexities of perspective on the people who we disagree with is what contributes to the growing field of conflict around the world, or at least part of it. I mean, I don't have the answer to the chaos that is geopolitical, the geopolitical context or anything, but I think that this is a really important capacity that we have. But again, the drug is not benevolent, and if we increase our psychedelic literacy around all psychedelics, but in particular LSD, and we're able to very consciously construct good scenarios to dose LSD, I think it can have a really positive contributing value onto the world.
And I feel like it's probably important to clarify exactly what I meant by that. Because one of my YouTube peoples, or one of the peoples that watch me on YouTube, messaged me or commented to say, well, you know, like, that sounds like the same fallacy that James Kent has unpacked. This idea that, you know, we're at some sort of critical moment in the world and that psychedelics are our savior. The same thing that Jeff Baker, a former guest of my podcast, called the messianic promise of ayahuasca. I mean, that's specific to ayahuasca, but there happens to be this sense of a messianic promise to psychedelics inside of psychedelic culture, especially inside of psychedelic proponents or enthusiasts like myself. And so, understandably, my point there could have been taken out of context, and the context that it was taken out of was context that wasn't included in the video. So I want to talk about that now. I think it's undeniable that we're at some sort of critical moment in our history, being that we are the most globalized we've ever been, and maybe every generation feels this, but we seem to be at some sort of tipping point or something. But then again, that could also be a fallacy. But to me, it seems like we're at a pretty interesting moment where we could keep going like this for a long time, or things could just come apart. It seems like from natural disasters to geopolitical issues, things are getting really unstable in our world. Whether or not that has anything to do with the possibilities of psychedelics bettering that situation, I don't really know, but I definitely feel as though we as a society are an extension of, or as I said in the video that I just mentioned before, our society and our civilization are accumulation of our personal experiences and beliefs that sort of, over time, generate different institutional values and belief systems, which then sort of reinforce which experiences we prioritize and which experiences we don't prioritize, or we shame, or basically, you know, make moralistically bad. Or the type of experiences we could even have based in the structure of our society. Like, for example, the chance of having a sense of mystical oneness with nature is pretty limited in a cultural model that basically, you know, situates capitalistic game at the top of its, you know, as its a priori of existence inside of the concrete jungles that are the major urban cities. So if what we structure as a society is an extension of what type of experiences and perspectives we give value to and which we rally against, then I think there's something really important to be said about the progression of psychedelics and psychedelic therapy inside of the modern world. Because if we are in a situation where it becomes increasingly more culturally appropriate, and there's an increasing presence of psychedelic experiences in people's lives, I think it's going to have a profound difference, or make a profound difference in the structure of our society. I mean, imagine what type of inner narrative and thus external cultural narratives people will be propagating if when they get back to the office on Monday, instead of talking about the shows that they watched or the particular things that they bought, or just, I don't know, whatever sort of very conventional but somewhat superficial materialistic conversations might be going on, that they are talking about how their psilocybin therapy session went. You know, oh, I had my psilocybin session this week. Oh, wow, that's amazing. I'm feeling really excited about mine. It's actually in 2 months. What did you experience? Like, wow, I really felt like I resolved some issues from my past. I didn't realize that the fact that I was never properly loved or acknowledged by my mother because she was, you know, not properly loved and acknowledged by her mother because my grandmother was actually very negatively abused and was a broken human being and not able to offer what she never got or could give to herself. And because of that, I've just been feeling really insecure with my body and with my sense of place in this world, and have been overcompensating for all these things. And now I get the sense that everything's going to be okay because I am perfect just the way I am, and I can feel confident for being the unique and beautiful expression that is me. Oh, wow, that's so amazing. I hope I get that kind of revelation in my psychedelic experience next month. I mean, I really think that it would have a positive benefit on the world as a whole if more conversations that were happening inside of open, non-stigmatized public spheres in reference to or referenced by a mystical or transcendental type experience which psychedelics can offer. Now, can psychedelics in and of themselves offer these things? Like, are psychedelics inherently benevolent or something? Absolutely not, you know. I think it's Groff that called them non-specific amplifiers of consciousness. There's no guarantee that what you're going to get is going to be good, and even if there's no guarantee, if regardless of what you get, that whether or not you're going to be able to make good of it, good or bad in the moment. So there's something to be said about a container that's built that encourages self-exploration, encourages personal healing, and encourages personal insight. And I think those are the type of results that people get. That's the type of meaning that people can glean from a psychedelic experience inside of a therapeutic container. And with the progression of psychedelic therapy and the medicalization of psychedelics, which will hopefully eventually lead to the legalization of recreational psychedelics, inside this therapeutic container, that's the meaning you're more likely to get. And if that's the meaning that's being implanted in the unconscious, eventually any meaning that you engage is going to land its way into the unconscious. If that's what the unconscious meaningfulness is of your experience, or that's like a, let me try not to get confused with myself, that's like a checkpoint, or like a primary node, a milestone of experience in your life, well, and then that is openly able to be talked about in a non-stigmatized arena, and that more and more people are having those experiences and more people are talking about it, the cultural narrative around what it means to be human and alive, especially in the Western world, is going to be radically transformed. And I think it could be radically transformed for the better, but not by nature of the psychedelics themselves, but by nature of the psychedelic experience being held inside of a therapeutic container. Now, I don't necessarily think that therapy is the only way to experience psychedelics. You know, you don't have to be you don't have to be broken to be better, I suppose. That's a quote from, I think it was Leor Roseman at one of the, which conference was it? I'll put a link in the description below. I don't know which one it is right now. But also, I mean, maybe it's not about healing something. Maybe it's not about trying to fix what's broken inside of you. Maybe you already know that you're not broken. Maybe that you're already okay with not being okay, and recognize that the imperfections that are the you know, the traumas and the deviations from authenticity and the challenges and the pain and the suffering and the places where you fuck up, that those are all really beautiful expressions of the unique perfection that is you as a unique being on this planet, wherein the very purpose of your existence is already fully manifest simply by being manifest, and you just want to take psychedelics because it feels amazing. And we should be allowed to do that too. And all of that emerges, I think, out of a context within this society where we get a strong, non-stigmatized cultural narrative around the psychedelic experience, which might then later create a much more positive social environment, which would then translate out into more positive social and institutional changes. But then again, maybe not. I mean, Occupy Wall Street, for example, thought they were going to bring down capitalism. I'm generalizing, but generalizing from a point that I was in Occupy Calgary. So to some degree, they thought they were going to bring down the system. They didn't, but they made positive changes to the narrative around financial institutions and the structure of our current society in the Western world. I mean, the love revolution of the 60s thought it was going to change everything, and it didn't really change everything. A lot of those people got themselves confused. A lot of those people never came back into society, let alone allowed society to change as a result of their transformations. But then also, I mean, a lot of people just got back into the grind. But at the same time, there was also this really incredible shift. If you look into the history, the role of the rise of LSD use in the youth culture of the 60s was an incredibly strong contributing factor to the anti-war movement. Anyways, all I'm trying to say here is that no, psychedelics will not save the world from the brink of destruction. However, where we are as a collective is an extension of where we are as individuals, and whether or not we're properly individuated, which is a different question that is in reference to my recent talk with Carl Abrahamson, which I'll link in the description below. But anyways, it's in reference to where we are as a person. So if we can transform how we are personally, which would then have an influence, if held in the right supportive container, on how we are interpersonally, then that would create a feedback loop which could positively influence the larger collective social narrative that is our society and our civilization. And psychedelics could play a role in that. I mean, possibly technology will play a role in that, although the progression of virtual reality technology, for example, isn't exactly going to the Ready Player One. Anyways, but it doesn't have to necessarily be psychedelics, but I do believe psychedelics can play a positive role in giving people a sense of place, positive meaning in their life, as well as a sense of freedom from being trapped within the traumas and wounds of their past, by giving them a place of perspective to those wounds being essential parts of their development moving forward into the current place of being whole and good and happy and resilient onto oneself. So, thanks for listening. Again, I like to just get high on caffeine and talk about stuff. And I like to talk about psychedelics. And I'm getting more into producing videos like this. In fact, I'm on a rig that I recently bought that helps me shoot these types of things. I don't know how well of a... Yeah, it's okay. Anyways, I've got this rig, and I invested in it because people like you supported my YouTube channel and my podcast by becoming patrons and by buying blotter art, actually, which is one of the products that I have for my show. But if you like this and you'd like to see more of this, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. And if you vehemently disagree with me, please comment and let me know. If you do agree with me, let me know. If you have some rooms for improvement, also let me know. Basically, engage me in the comments on jameswjesso.com or here on YouTube. Like the video if you like it. I'm just walking through some bushes here. Like the video if you like it, and become my patron on Patreon if you'd like to be directly involved in the funding of this show. This is it. Such a wonderful walk in the park, despite the fact that I have my face in a phone. See you soon.